Hey there, Empowered Tribe. It's Angela T. Moore. You're getting ready to experience the next episode of Empowered, a health and wellness podcast where I share my personal journey of health and healing, tips for mental and physical health, interviews with health and wellness experts and those bold enough and vulnerable enough to share their own journeys to empower you to succeed in yours. We know that life can be rewarding. It can also be challenging. It has its ups and downs, highs and lows. I learned that with a strong mind and a fit body, you are better able to grow through and grow from whatever life throws your way. My goal is to share journeys of health and wellness, as well as tips and information from extraordinary people all around the world to help you live an empowered life. My guest, Shara Ruffin, is an independently licensed clinical social worker and former psychotherapist from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Shara has specializations in grief, personality disorders, family trauma, compassion fatigue, military counseling, mindfulness meditation, ADHD, and anxiety. Shara is also a 5-time Amazon bestseller of a social work journal called 90 Days of Prayer. She's also the author of her second best-selling social work journal, 90 Days of Inspiration, a study companion for social workers taking their licensing exam. Currently, Shara is the founder and CEO of consulting company Journey to Licensure, which supports social workers through licensure examinations. In this episode, Shara talks openly about her own personal journey to licensure, as well as the many ways that she has helped other social workers successfully study for and pass their exams. She also shares some of what she learned by helping countless professionals successfully navigate through the many challenges and successes of life, inside and outside of the office. I hope you enjoy the episode. You are the founder and CEO of a consulting company called Journey to Licensure, which supports social workers through their licensure examinations. What are some challenges that social workers face while preparing for their licensure exams, and how does your company address those challenges?
Sure, I would love to talk about those. Well, many of my colleagues, they face a lot of challenges when it comes to the licensure, and there's a multitude of factors, whether they don't have enough support. A lot of universities don't teach how to pass the licensing exams, and if they do, it's usually just a one-stop shop and done. Because of what my experience was with licensure, I have ADHD, generalized anxiety disorder, and a learning disorder. So testing was always horrible for me. And when I started, there was a gap in services when it came to helping social workers pass their board exams by using a holistic approach, where I may have parents that need help with how to study and they're not a student anymore. They've been out of school for years, coming up with a study plan to use, coming up with a process that fits how they learn best. There are tons of self-study programs. There are popular tutors out there as well. I'm neither one of those. I'm a exam coach, which basically means that as a former therapist, I have 23 specializations. So a lot of what I do is personalize the process for the person that I'm working with, going from their lifestyle to asking them questions around their mental health, seeing if they have any underlying mental health conditions they may not even know about that may be impacting their ability to get through the licensing journey, as well as just being an on-call support for them, where a tutor, they may meet with them once a week. A self-study program, they have no one to check in with them. A lot of my colleagues don't know how to study, period, for how they learn. And the issue that I've seen is that with all the self-study programs that are out there is a group of folks that don't really align with those programs because they use a one-size-fit-all type of approach. Even market it that it's more personalized when it's not. So that's usually where I come in. I work with a range of social workers, going from a social worker that was deaf to passing her boards for the first time to a social worker that was blind, ADHD, PTSD, TBIs, different social workers that I've helped to have them gain their licensure so they can move on in their career. And that's what I provide, more of a holistic approach, but it is built off of what my story was, struggling to pass board exams because of being undiagnosed and then diagnosed. And going through what that journey was. Many of my colleagues seem to connect with that journey. It's been about 3.5 years and it's still going strong. But that's what I provide to them, more of a personalized, holistic approach and giving them on-call emotional support as well.
I love that. So how often do you typically meet with your clients?
So I had two modalities. I do group and one-to-one. Group, I meet with them for 2 hours once a week. They do interact with me through an interface where they can drop questions. I do some on-call calls if need be, but it's built into their coaching program ahead of time. One-to-one, it's basically usually around the clock unless I'm sleeping. There are some boundaries around time frames if I'm with my family because I have 3 children and a husband. But other than that, it's usually on-call coaching as they need it. So that's kind of where that is.
Interesting, interesting. I don't know that I have spoken with many people that are coaches that do on-call coaching. I think
Mm-hmm.
many times it's more structured where you're meeting with a client once a week or bi-weekly or something like that. I imagine that for the client that is seeking your support to know that they can call you when they need it is very beneficial to them.
Very much so. And most people will ask, even my colleagues, well, how do you benefit that? I said, well, being a former therapist of 17 years, you learn I used to have a very heavy caseload most of the time. And I'm used to dealing with a heavy caseload within reason of my own self-care. But because of the lifestyle that I have now, I have that mental space to be able to allocate that time to them as they need it. And they're also paying for that time. One-on-one is
Right,
a
of
lot
course.
different when it comes to the value that they get compared to group.
Yeah.
So there's that piece as well. So they get that on-call support, but there is definitely value to it. They are paying for that support
Mhm.
as well.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, you have to get paid for the value,
Mm-hmm.
definitely. Now, what's interesting, I learned in my research as I was preparing for the interview today that you are also the bestseller of a social work journal called
Mm-hmm.
journal called 90 Days of Prayer, as well as a second journal that you created called 90 Days of Inspiration, which is a study companion for social workers that
Mm-hmm.
are, of course, as we've been discussing, preparing to take their licensure exam. Why did you feel it was important to create, I would say both journals, a journal of prayer as well as a journal of inspiration?
Both of those books were inspiration from my own journey. When I wrote those, I was in the height of the pandemic. I had just lost my job. I had bombed my clinical boards that would allow me to go to practice for myself. It took me a decade to actually get into the testing room. To get that board, qualify for the board, it takes 2 years. It took me a decade. So when I failed it by 2 points, I was devastated. So I couldn't afford a therapist at the time. I didn't have insurance. I had lost basically everything. So I got a journal. And it was my son's old notebook. He was entering kindergarten at the time. I can't believe he's going to 5th grade now. But
Time
I
flies,
would
right?
write, yes, he'll be 10 next month. I'm like, huh? But yes, so I got a notebook, and every day, whether I believed it or not, I'm a very spiritual woman. I would write down quotes, any type of inspiration I would find, and I would write a prayer request. And I did that for about a whole year, almost a whole year to the day that I actually tested, behind writing my letters behind my name. And it was a compilation of notes that I kept, that this journal was my therapist. This journal, I needed to get those thoughts out. And I know the power of affirmation. And there were days where I just didn't believe anything that I wrote there or anything that I pulled. And that was okay. But I knew I needed to feed my mind something that could counteract the negative thoughts that I would have. So that journal, well, that notebook turned into 2 separate books. I wrote both those journals in about 3 weeks. They're both 100 pages each. Most people were like, well, how did you write that? And well, I had the content. I just needed to find a way to formulate it. When I decided to put both of those journals out 3 months apart from each other, I thought it would be a way of handing off to my colleagues, even those that I didn't know, that say that, hey, this was my journey. I hope that this helps you in some way. I'm now done with this part of my journey, and I want to pass it on. And I had no idea that it would blow up the way it did, and being a powerful way for my colleagues to connect to me, even if they didn't know me, to have something that was just for them. It's nothing like in a marketplace, a journal that's specifically for social workers, no matter if they're in their career coming out of school or what, to have something that they can use as their own kind of pick me up each day that they're in the process of studying. Now, both the books are very separate and has different intents. The 90 Days of Prayer Journal is specifically spiritual. I'm a very spiritual woman, religious. And for those that were more spiritually based, they could have that journal, 90 Days of Prayer. Now, the 90 Days of Inspiration Journal is more of a mindset journal. So I do let my colleagues know that they're two separate, but they have the same intention. They're just two separate purposes in terms of one is spiritual, one is mindset. And usually they grab both of those. But it's been pretty impactful in terms of the response, which I didn't think would go as far as it did.
Yeah, it's interesting that you say that, because one of the things that I've recognized, well, first, let me say, I have said over and over again that I think that when you go through things, you are allowed to go through those things, because once you go through it and you're on the other side, or even when you're in the midst of that part of that journey, that it is your responsibility to share it if you feel you can comfortably do so. And I find that oftentimes what you'll find that people that are on a similar journey will be able to benefit personally from your very personal experience, because it is an experience that you lived. It's an experience. You're not talking about what you think somebody has experienced. You're actually sharing your own personal experience. And so I think that people are able to connect in a more deeper way when people like you and I share our experiences. And ironically, whenever I have posted about significant parts of my journey, just in a social post, it's amazing the response that I get to those particular posts, say, versus when I'm talking about something in general. So I think very specifically, if we are open to sharing our journeys, I think there are many people that are willing and hoping for the opportunity to find and seek help with their experiences by connecting with people like ourselves.
I agree.
Now, one of the things that I wanted to ask you, so you've talked about the fact that you are an author, which, as you said, it was a compilation of 10 years, but you were able to put that information down, basically in 3 weeks, a matter of, formatting and getting it together. But as an author, how has your work as an author and seeing how people were able to connect with your work once you presented it to the world, how has your experience as an author assisted you in your work as a social worker and the CEO of your company journey to licensure?
I would say as an author, it's definitely, it's funny because during those terms, I still didn't consider myself an author. For some reason in my head, I was just like, it's just a journal. It's not a book, but I'm like, well, it is a book. It took me a while to actually get used to, saying author. I would say the journals have been a way for me to connect my message and my brand. Especially when it comes to mental health, that's always a cornerstone of what I do, is trying to get people to think about how their thoughts impact their behaviors and their feelings and their lives, and how we navigate that space, whether you're a social worker or not. Being a therapist for most of the time that I've been a social worker, it's always been an interesting place to be in, to help people go work through those different periods of their life. As a CEO and founder of my company, it's definitely been a good, what's the word I'm looking for? It's been a good platform to utilize to help people, even if they're not ready to come to me right yet. They may have grabbed my book. One of my journals is like, oh man, I read your journal. It's really powerful. I thought I'd reach out to you. What I found is that those books are more of an extension of my experience, but it's also been a springboard of empowerment for colleagues. I've actually had people buy the book who weren't even social workers, which said a lot.
Yeah. Well, I think one of the things that we definitely have to recognize is, though, even though I think that what you do in your life is a clear indication of what you were purposed and created to do. And I think that if you can align with what you instinctively are passionate about, if you're able to create that in your profession, I think it's a perfect match. And I think, though, but I you have to recognize that even when you do decide, okay, what that role is or what it is that I'm going to do or what my label, my title will be, that you will find that people outside of that even may not even understand completely what it is that you do, that if there's
Hmm.
some aspects of your story that they can connect to, they're going to connect to it regardless.
Oh, yes. I found that journey very much so when I started my personal brand story on LinkedIn. That's a lot. Most people that follow me there are not social workers at all, but
Mm-hmm.
they've been following me for so many years and they've seen the transgression of that journey, going from being a busy, burned out mother, single mom, and watched me going through that journey in real time, not just through pictures, but through video. I actually had somebody reach out to say, "Hey, I've been watching 4 years," and he's an auditor. He's like, "I'm just always inspired by how you have went from where you were to where you are now." And it speaks to so many different facets of my story, that people can relate to, even if they're not social workers. So that's always been a powerful reminder to me of why it was important for me to share in the first place.
Yeah, most definitely. Now, in any profession, I would say, actually, let me go back because I want to talk to you about something. Because just actually yesterday, I talked to a group of workers at a manufacturing technology center about ways to integrate health and wellness into their personal and professional lives. And one of the suggestions I gave them was to integrate mindfulness and meditation into their day.
Hmm.
And, prior to the interview today, we were talking about how busy we were and how we have to be very intentional of taking good care of ourselves. And before I continue with the interview, I would like to kind of touch on that because I know mindfulness and meditation can be used as a wonderful tool to stabilize yourself, to kind of, center yourself. I am also a very spiritual person, and I'm very intentional about creating time and space to spend my time with God, to spend my time with myself. And I think that it's an important thing to do. And so I would like to ask you, being that you work with clients and you work with a number of clients day after day, how do you integrate mindfulness and meditation into your practice? And how have you seen it impact the well-being of your clients?
So I would probably have to go back to, as you were talking, I was thinking about the origin of when I started mindfulness meditation
Mhm.
myself. I was at a turning point in my career in 2018. And I could feel that I needed to change something and I didn't know what that was. So I became a certified mindfulness instructor. And I went to a silent retreat and it totally changed my life in terms of learning how to regulate my own stress because I was kind of at the break of burnout at the time at the job that I was at. And then I brought it to my clients when I was a therapist. I would do meditation, mindfulness groups, and I was starting to do mindfulness meditation myself in practice each morning. Or I would do walking meditation, and I still do it to this day. The walking meditation, not as much, but each morning I will meditate, and I meditate in the evening time. And sometimes I'll do it 3 times a day if I feel that I'm out of sync with myself, if I'm out of sync, if I'm on the go, 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 and I haven't stopped. I will pause and say, okay, you know what? Let me just pull my mindfulness folding chair out and take at least 5 minutes, no matter what's going on. Kids running around, my guinea pigs, I have a farm of them in my son's room that we share because I can hear them squeaking. They can be stressful too. My husband, so I'll just take that moment, and they know that if they see that folding chair come out with my little lotus flower, they know what it is. They's like, don't, don't let her do whatever it is she need to do, so we can get the best version of her. It's protected time, and sometimes it's needed. I wear a lot of different hats. And most people ask me, how do you do all that stuff? And even though I never really think about it, because if I think about it, I'll freeze. Um, what usually helps me is emotional regulation, being able to be in touch with my own body. I find that when I become more anxious, my chest would get tightened, rapid heartbeat, a lot of the somatic symptoms in my body that I would feel and know that I'm out of sync, that I need to take a pause, that I need to delegate some stuff. It keeps me just out of my mind and back into my body so I can know what it is that I need. in order to be the best version I can be for my clients, for my family, for my friends. It gives me that mental space. I find when I don't do it, interesting enough, it feels like I'm kind of in the cogwheel of a big machine, and I have no idea that I'm still on the rat race. It helps me to just really be connected. When that occurs, it makes me a better founder. It makes me a better businesswoman. And it also makes me a better coach to be aligned with why I'm doing the work that I'm doing. But also it allows me to reinforce my own boundaries in order for me to make sure that I am taking care of myself and not just everyone else's needs. So it's a form of self-love for me.
Yeah. And I think that a lot of times people feel guilty to take time to love yourself, and to create that time and space and to actually guard it, to say, I'm not available. I can't be available to you right now because I need to fill myself back up. I need to center myself. I need to take time to, rejuvenate, relax, and refresh myself so that I can be a better version of myself. And I love when our supporters, our family members, those people that love and care about us, recognize the importance of that and give us that space. And I would say respect the time and space that we need to take.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Oh, they do. They don't have a choice.
I love it. I love it. I love it. Now, one of the things that, and I don't know how familiar you are with me, but I have openly shared on my social media platforms my unfortunate experience with grief and trauma. And grief and trauma affects so many different people. And I believe that oftentimes counselors, therapists, social workers get into the field of, of mental health, I would say because of their own personal experiences. And I think because of that, they're able to connect with people in a much more deeper way. But I do recognize that oftentimes, because of the work, that you may be triggered as you are assisting the client and supporting them through an experience that may be similar to something that you experienced. And it's really important that the helpers, the supporters, get the support that they need. So as someone, who has experienced grief and trauma, what advice do you have for social workers supporting clients who themselves have experienced, loss and bereavement?
As someone who also has a background in trauma and grief, I used to be a certified grief counselor, and I had extensive work in trauma. It's so important, because I've experienced this even personally, to make sure that you have support. We're human too. And when we become triggered, we call it countertransference. It's so important that we are able to recognize it. Yeah. And we're able to talk to either our supervisor about it, or we also make sure that, even both, supervisor and seeking your own therapist. You never want to work from a place of that you're bleeding and you don't know it. You're just bleeding out, and it can actually do more damage to your client, because then you're not aligned with why you're there to help them. You end up going to a very toxic place where it impedes their own process, and then the dynamics switch.
Most definitely, yeah.
It's important to seek that. Even my own training, I've been triggered. I've had those issues, and I will always talk to my supervisor about it. And if they were not too helpful, I would make sure I sought someone that was, whether there was a therapist or another trusted colleague, to talk it through. Because all in all, you're there to support the client. They're not there to be your therapist. But it's also okay to acknowledge that you are triggered. It's important to acknowledge that you may not be they have the emotional capacity. So it's important to seek that help. I'm someone that is a big advocate of therapists having therapists, of even coaches, If you're in a helping profession, you need to have support to be able to filter your own feelings out, because it ends up being a disservice to your clients if you're not in a place to do so, no matter what type of service provider you are.
Most definitely. One of the things that I really like that you said, and I want to kind of go back and highlight that, you talked about how if there's a issue where you seek the support of, say, your therapist, and they're not able to provide you the support that you need, of recognizing that and then seeking a support where needed. And I think that that's something that I think people struggle with at times, is when you have, say, historically and over a period of time gone to a particular person for support. And if that person, for whatever reason, is not able to support you in the thing that you need at that time, that you feel almost guilty going to someone else to have them assist you in a different way. And I think it's important that we recognize that people are able to help us through different things, but sometimes they're not able to help us with specifically what we need at the time. And when that is the case, it's nothing wrong with seeking help for someone that may be better able, better trained, better experienced in that particular thing. It doesn't mean that you can't return to that therapist or that person for social support. It just may mean that you are not able to seek the support from them for that particular thing that you're going through at that particular time.
I agree. Definitely so.
Mm-hmm. Now, one of the things that I will say is, I think that the journey of a mental health professional can be challenging whenever you're going through something really significant in your life. And we have no way of controlling that. And I imagine, as someone, as you mentioned, that was a single mother, and then obviously you mentioned that you're married now, and as you're going through different transitions of having children and the very joyful experiences, but also some of the challenging experiences that we have as mother, as women, as wives, how have you been able to, manage the ups and downs of life, the joys, the challenges, the unexpected situations, circumstances that come with life, while you have been attempting and successfully doing so to support, many other people through their ups and downs and challenges and unforeseen experiences that happen in their lives?
I would say, because as you were talking, honestly, there are times where I'm just like, I don't even know how I'm doing. I'm like, she asking a magical question, because I get that question a lot. I honestly, besides holding on to my faith, I hold on to the fact that life changes constantly. The most painful thing that can happen to you will be painful today, but it'll be a lesson tomorrow. Mm-hmm. I've had so many different losses, from losing my daughter to losing my brother, to in the midst of having a lot of success, to supporting folks, to dealing with my own mental health crises. And sometimes I even ask myself, how are you doing this? But I think allowing myself to be human and going through those challenges, not willingly, but even kicking and screaming, allowing myself to go through those challenges, knowing that they won't last forever, that it will be a blueprint for someone else later. It does help. Now, going through those, am I thinking so metaphorically? No. There have been a lot of tears shed, but with that, I know that my experiences will not go in vain, that there are lessons that I needed from them, whether it was in loss, whether it was in joy, that these are lessons that will help me in the next part of it. So that's the strength that I always pull from, and even remind myself when I'm facing a challenge, or even when my colleagues come to me with their challenges, I often talk to my colleagues a lot as my past self, because many of their mirrored experiences I could relate to, because I've been through a lot of them. So allowing them to have that space, I have the patience to pull from, because I've been there. While navigating even some of my own challenges to this day. But making sure I'm taking care of myself, even when I fall off the wheel, because sometimes that happens too. And staying true to my own faith, and knowing that life is going to throw things at me, professionally and personally. And I'm not always going to be ready for it, but I have to be willing to go through it, because life is just going to throw it at me anyway. So I might as well just say, hey, here I am. Get it over with. And that's the stance that I've usually taken whenever I've taken that stance, of just allowing myself to be in that experience, no matter what the outcome is. It's always suited me well.
Yeah. It's interesting. I think that when someone hears about a significant loss that someone has experienced, and one of the things that I've definitely recognized is that we have an amazing ability to endure the most painful things that you can ever imagine. And I'm sure, and prior to, if you have ever thought that you would lose the significant people that you mentioned, maybe you, looking at that woman, would have thought, there's no way that I could ever go through something like that and be okay. And what you find is, after you go through a difficult time like that, and whatever it is that you're able to tap into and find strength and courage, I would say, to move on, when you look back, it's amazing if you can look back and think about it from that perspective that you just shared. Because I know that for many people, for a lot of people that have had significant losses, some of them are still lost, and some of them are still struggling. And thank God for people like yourself, and I would even say people like myself, that have suffered a lot, that God has positioned us to be of support to other people, and to be able to be of that support from a grounded, stable place, tapped into the source that got us through those things. Because I think from that place, we're able to help other individuals navigate through those very difficult storms of life.
You pretty much hit it on the head. I couldn't have said it any better than what you just did. I think having those experiences do help you to help others navigate their storms.
Yeah. Now, as we end today, one of the things that I love to give my guests the opportunity is to share any final words. Is there anything in particular that you would want to share with someone that's going to listen to this podcast? I don't know, nuggets, seeds, whatever you want to call it. Is there anything that you would like to share with those that are going to be listening to you and be inspired by your story and by the journey and the work that you do?
I would say the one thing that keeps popping up in my head is the journey. I am somebody that has been always looked at as she's got everything. And what I always tell people is I never feel the way people perceive me to be. I always look at life now, more so at almost break of 40 now. Life as ever changing, that I am more so enjoying the ride, and making sure that I'm intentional each day. And I think what I would pass on to any listener is set the intention, no matter what the day is going to bring, that you are going to align to your purpose and stand true to who you are. That has always been an anchoring space for me, to stay true to who I am, no matter what happens, no matter how I'm perceived, that I'm going to be grounded in my own state of peace of mind. It's the most valuable thing that you have, because many people don't even have that. So that's what I would say.
Well, thank you for saying it, and you said it very eloquently. So I really appreciate you
Thank you.
taking time out of your very busy schedule. I really look forward to learning more about you. One of the things that I say is never ever minimize the importance of a cross path, because at any time in any place we could be somewhere else, but for some reason God had our paths cross, and I'm curious to see why, and I'm looking forward to learning why and learning more about you. And thank you so much for sharing your purpose and your passion with me, and I just really look forward to learning more about you.
Why, thank you so much for having me, and I hope your audience got some nuggets out of it. And it was a joy to have the conversation today, to just, with your busy schedule as well, just to be able to talk about the things that really matter.
You're very welcome. Thanks for listening to Empowerment with Angela T. Moore. Feel free to share this episode with someone you think would enjoy it. New episodes come out weekly. Follow our show on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you're listening right now.